So this kind of starts us to where we kind of left off with our conversation with each other, which is back in January. So maybe if we can just jump in the time machine for a bit, go back about 6 months, because when we talked in January, this was really, and what kind of spurred our conversation with wanting to make sure that we were speaking to people was the footnote that came out in the January Visa Bulletin, which we spoke about in December, right? Because this was something that really started to, you know, bring a lot of concerns to people. It really started people's conversations about, whoa, what are we looking at here in the very near future? Is this something that we need to prepare for right away? Which we brought some information to people. I think at that time we had some insights about when and maybe if there, I guess if isn't the right word, knowing that at some point there could be a date of final action for the reserved categories, but talking about the fact that even though this is a possibility, it's still something that was further way down the line. I think when we talked about it, our best guess or our best anticipation was that we could start seeing a date of final action potentially for high unemployment area projects currently, potentially as soon as like May or June, basically when we're talking now. And that there could potentially be a date of final action that we could be looking at for rural projects. So now it is May and the June bulletin has now come out. And obviously we are in a situation where all these categories are still current. So maybe if you guys would like to give a little bit of insight and going back over these last 6 months, where we are, what this Visa Bulletin has meant, and what we can look at here as we go forward.
Sure. Well, when we first started talking about it, I think the major point of this footnote was to give some semblance of, hey, we're looking at the number of filings that are going on at USCIS in the reserve categories and that we're going to be keeping our eye on it. And that's why they talk about that they're going to be continually monitoring the situation. At that time, this didn't say anything about the unreserved category. And there were concerns then, well, what does this mean for the unreserved category? And our thought was, well, no, this is only about the set aside categories. We're not talking about the unreserved category. And I think what we said is we shouldn't really be thinking about how this could impact the unreserved category. Charlie, is that right? Isn't that kind of how we were thinking about it then?
Yeah, this note actually, as you said, they saw that the amount of petitions being filed in the reserved categories would eventually require the establishment of final action dates. And they just basically wanted to give people a warning. I think that they were premature in posting this note in the bulletin and that it caused unnecessary concern in the reserved community. I could have, this type of note would have been better served if it had been published, say about now in the June Visa Bulletin or the July Visa Bulletin, going as they get ready for the next fiscal year. But at the time, it was kind of unnecessary, and like I said, caused unnecessary concern in the reserved community.
Right. And we thought that if the Department of State would be imposing final action dates, then that would inhibit people's ability to do EB-5 at the same time of filing an adjustment of status. And since there's a lot of people in the United States that are doing EB-5 now more than historically, that could impact, demand. What we didn't know at that time was some of the information that we've received since then regarding USCIS adjudication processing. And I think what we have come to see is that they aren't adjudicating enough of these set aside I-526Es to generate enough demand to exceed the actual supply or the limits. And because of that, that's why those categories remain current today. It's because there still isn't enough approved I-526s. And so we didn't know that 6 months ago. And I guess the Department of State didn't know that either. And so the big thing, though, that I think has changed since this time, because is what's happened in the unreserved category, and there has been movement there. And there hasn't been a lot of conversation about it because it's a little bit confusing as to why it's been happening.